I have a couple of MSI mini PCs here. In this video, I want to give you a tour of the outside, open them up, give you a little tour of the inside and see what kind of specs we're rocking. And then I did run a few benchmarks just to get a little taste of the performance that you can expect from these. And at the very end, my coworker Will is going to hop on and talk about using these potentially for home servers. So let's dig right in. All right, so on the left here, we have the MSI Pro DP21 14MQ. On the right here, we have the MSI Cubi NUC 1MG. We're going to go through both of these mini PCs, but let's start off with the smaller one and work our way up. Before we get to the actual device, let's show what they have in the box. A nice little simple box with a 120 watt power brick that is terminated into a barrel charger. We have a plate so that you can mount it to a VESA standard mount, maybe on the back of your monitor. It does have an extension power button that I'll show you the port along the side of it, and then also in addition to add a 2.5-inch external SSD. I will show that when we do the teardown. And also in the box is the device itself. So let's do a quick tour of the outside. Nothing on the top other than a nice sticker and a subtle MSI logo. Along the front we have a courageous 1/8-inch headphone jack, two Type A USB 3 ports. You can see they're super speed at 10 gig. There is a micro SD card reader, an indicator to tell you when the I/O is working or the computer is working. There's a power button that does light up, a very silent little click. Along the left side is a Kensington lock port, so you can lock it down at your desk, make sure it's not going to wander off. Along the other side, here is where you would plug in your little external power button. It is a little confusing because it has a little internal header cover that you need to pull out with pliers to then be able to plug in the power switch. And it goes like that, and you can plug it in either way because it'll work in either way, and then you can power on the device externally. Along the back we have two more USB 3 Type A ports, super speed 10 gig. We have two Thunderbolt ports here along the back, two HDMI ports, one with the power link, and two 2.5 gig Ethernet jacks. And then here is where you plug in the external power brick with the barrel charger. Now along the bottom is where you would mount, they have the mounting points for the VESA bracket and you know, a nice little pattern for venting in the bottom. And let's take this off now and do a little bit of tour of the inside. So all I did was unscrew these 4 screws, and they are actually captive, so they will not fall out, which is nice. We get a better look at the back plate here. This is also where you can mount the extra 2.5-inch SSD if you would like. We'll talk about that more in a second. Now we get to look inside the device itself. You can see that, wait, where's the processor? That is because it's actually on the other side of the motherboard. This is all the stuff you would need to access to be able to upgrade the system. You can see we have the 2 SODIMMs for the memory. These are both Samsung DDR5 kits at 8 gigabytes each. At a speed of 5,600 megatransfers per second, so a total of 16 gigs in this configuration, but as you can see, it is user upgradable. And over here we have our storage. You can see this nice big heatsink. We also have the ability to add another SSD, an M.2 SSD, but this is in the 2242 configuration, so a little bit of an odd size. This is 2280, this is 2242, so if you wanted to add an extra drive, you could. You just need to make sure that you have the right sizing for that. Let's go ahead and take off this heatsink. So I unscrewed the heatsink. One of them is a shorter screw, one of them is a little bit longer, and I will show you why in a second. Pulling it off, it is a nice chunky heatsink with a full thermal pad on it. Included in this configuration was a WD SN560 NVMe Gen 4 SSD. This is 1 terabyte. It only is one-sided, so you only have to worry about cooling the one side. Underneath, you actually see that it exposes the user replaceable Wi-Fi card. That is also why this screw was a little bit longer than the one that was screwed in over here. So if you remember in the box, there was this extension cable to install an extra 2.5-inch SSD. I have one here just for show. You can see this is the standard SATA connection. So you would plug it in here on this end. On the other end, you would actually need to plug it in with this push pin system onto the motherboard itself. And it's a little tiny, but if you can get in here, you can see that says SATA 1. So essentially, you would need to plug in the header flat, make sure it clicks, and it is actually going to lay underneath the NVMe SSD on top of it. So if you were going to install this, you have to take out the M.2 NVMe SSD. But if you didn't want it, you can actually use this pull tab to take it back out. And once again, rather than having the SSD just kind of floating in the system, it is recommended that you mount it to those pins here on the plate. Then you would just have to make sure that whenever you take the back off, you don't accidentally pull it out. So I'm not actually going to pull out the rest of the system to show you the other side because it is a little more complicated of a process, and really you're not going to see much other than a heatsink and cooling. This internally in this configuration, this does have an Intel Core 7 150U. That is a Raptor Lake CPU with 2 performance cores with hyperthreading and 8 efficiency cores for a total of 12 cores. It has Intel graphics inside, but there are other configurations options depending on how you want to spec the system out. So I screwed the back panel back on, and there's a nice little handy front arrow to indicate which way you need to orient the back plate. And I will say the last couple things to note is that together with the actual system and the power supply, it clocks in at 2 pounds and 10 ounces. Now there are a lot of different configurations you can get in terms of the RAM and the processor. You can actually get a bare bones kit as well. Prices are a little hard to nail down right now, but it seems like the configuration that I have right now is around $880. So I've seen it as low if you go with a lower processor or a bare bones kit, lower, of like $500. So it really depends on what you want to get. And it is available on Amazon, Newegg, and other places. Now let's move over to the bigger mini PC. This is the MSI Pro DP21 14MQ. Let's set this aside for a second and go over what is in the box. A nice simple box experience. You have a nice little instructions for mounting. We have a whole kit to mount, but then also a couple screws to add in extra hard drives. We have little rubber feet, actually 2 pair of them, just in case you want to replace them. And then underneath the cardboard here, we see we have a couple options. This is for the VESA mounting. They explain the different configurations here on the sleeve and add the necessary hardware for that. But also, there's a little bit of a stand. So if you wanted to, you could just plop it here on this vertical stand and away you go. Also included is one SATA cable. Like I said, if you want to install an extra 2.5-inch SSD. And then we have what seems to be the exact same power brick, rated at 120 watts with a dedicated barrel charger. And of course, the system itself is in the box. Let's do a quick tour of the outside. Along the top here, we can see big venting and a cooler underneath for the actual processor itself. It needs a lot of fresh air. We see a little bit of subtle branding for the Pro Series and designed and engineered by MSI. Let's look at the front here. We see an interesting grille pattern. Starting on the left, we have the power button that does light up. We have a LED indicator here that the I/O is being used. We have 2 1/8-inch headphone ports. One of them is for actual headphone out. One of them is for microphone in. We have 3 Type A USB ports. 2 of them are USB 2.0 and one of them is USB 3.0. The super speed indicator here does not have an actual speed on it, but I'm going to assume that it is true 3.0, so 10 gig per second, and a Type-C port along the front here. It also has a super speed indicator, and I do not believe that this is Thunderbolt. We also see an MSI logo here. On this side, there's not much to look at other than stickers. On this side, we see a little bit more venting, and you would want to make sure that this is the top of the vertical orientation. So along the back here, starting off on the left, we have the Kensington lock port that not only attaches to the device itself, but also attaches to the lid, so you cannot access the device while a lock is in place. We have a DC power in barrel charger. We have one HDMI, one display port, one RJ45. It does not indicate, but I believe this is a gigabit Ethernet, and also a COM port for serial communications. We have some USB here. We have 3 Type A ports. These are indicated as super speed 10 gig, and then one more Type C that does not have any indication that it is a Thunderbolt, and it is not. We have 2 more 1/8" jacks, one of them for another microphone in, and this one for, I believe, a line out. Also here is another one of those slots that you can use an external power button if you wanted to. It still has the little plug in there, so you need needle nose pliers to get it out to insert it. And along the bottom side, we pretty much have nothing other than the options for the mounting plate. So to get the top plate off, all I did was unscrew these 2 screws here, and you slide it back and pull it off. There is a integrated grill here that is not fine mesh, but you probably do want to clean that every once in a while. And once we look inside, this is a little bit of a different configuration than the Cubi NUC. But you can see along the side here, we do have a cage for the external hard drives. There is one included, but then also one NVMe SSD here. I'm going to take this cage out just to show you what's underneath. But before I do want to show off that there is a little lever here that indicates that the lid has been tampered with. So if there is security in place to show somebody in IT that you have taken the lid off, then this could potentially signal them. So in order to get this out, it was just 3 screws, 2 at the top, 1 at the bottom here, and we release this little cage. Turn it around, you see it does have, in this configuration, a pre-installed 2.5-inch spinning platter drive, but there is room here to install yet another 2.5-inch drive here with the included hardware that they had. It has the extra SATA cable in the box, so you just route that and you follow it down here right next to the open slot next to this one that is populated, and you can see what's powering it is an interesting SATA plug that goes from the normal SATA connector here to a header on the motherboard. This is not like a normal desktop-based system, and if you wanted to add a second drive, it actually, you can see that it splits off here, and it is included actually already in here, and they just tape it down in the corner. So if you were to add a second drive, you would insert the SATA cable and then untape this power plug and power it that way. On the left side here, you can see that this also does have 2 SODIMM. This is actually a similar configuration. These are Samsung DDR5 SODIMMs. These are 8 gigs each in the configuration that I was sent, so a total of 16. But this actually is clocked a little bit higher at 5,600 megatransfers per second. But either way, it is easy to upgrade yourself if you wanted to. You can see here there is a replaceable Wi-Fi module that is already installed. And then a 2280 NVMe SSD. This is the same WD SN560 Gen 4 SSD, but this one, as configured for me, was actually half a terabyte. Surprisingly enough, there is actually no top plate to dissipate any of the heat. I'm not quite sure why the smaller one had it, and this one didn't. But yeah, an interesting choice indeed. And then one of the last things to talk about is right there. That is a TPM module. So even though TPM is included in most modern processors for business uses, potentially they, maybe wanted to have a separate TPM module that can be managed by your IT department. Either way, this did come already pre-installed, and to tell you the truth, this is the first time I'm personally seeing a TPM module, so I was kind of excited to see one. The star of the show here is underneath this cooler. I'm actually going to pop this out to show you what kind of mounting option that they have here. So with the cooler detached, you can see that this has a socketable desktop part in here. This is actually an Intel Core i7-14700 non-K, so it is not overclockable. This does have 8 performance cores with no hyperthreading and 12 efficiency cores, so 20 total cores. We do see the pre-installed thermal paste seems to be quite even, but this is the stock ILM. Either way, if you wanted to, you could theoretically upgrade the processor in here. This is a desktop part. So that's it for the hardware itself. I did go ahead and configure these systems to do a fresh Windows install. It did not actually have a ton of bloatware on him pre-installed, so that was nice. And I ran a handful of benchmarks. And to tell you the truth, we don't really test mini PCs around here. This is something we're maybe thinking of getting into, so I just want to kind of get a little taste of what you could see with the performance. I don't have a big backlog of other mini PCs to compare it to performance-wise. I will throw up some numbers from other comparable systems that we have, whether it's a laptop part or a desktop part, just to kind of see, you know, maybe a ballpark of what you're going to get, but by no means is it a direct comparison. So the ways that I tested, the first one, I wanted to do a heavy CPU test. So for that, I used Cinebench R23, and I ran it both in single thread and multi-threaded mode. I also wanted to load up a heavy graphics, synthetic graphics benchmark. So for that, I used 3D Time Spy. That one tests at 1080p with pretty moderate settings. And the last kind of general benchmark that I ran was PC Mark 10. So that actually does use a lot of open source applications to go through things like photo editing, phone calls, web browsing, things like that, just to kind of give you a little taste of just overall kind of like office use on these systems. And yeah, that's about it. If you actually wanted to get more into the nitty-gritty performance, let me know. I'm kind of curious to see what people think of these mini PCs and how they're using them. But before we get out of here, I actually want to invite my coworker Will Smith to come in, because when he saw these mini PCs, he actually was excited to check out Linux support and also using them for home media servers. So let's kick it over to Will.
Thanks, Adam. So I took the Cubi NUC 1M home and set it up as a mirror for my home lab server. Now, my home lab server is an 11th gen Intel B-Link machine. It's about a $150 box, and I actually bought it because it's an incredibly low power machine that still has Intel's QuickSync technology, so you can use it for things like Plex serving and still get hardware accelerated video transcodes for up to 4K, even some HDR tone mapping and stuff like that, which is important if you have a big Plex server and you want to be able to watch whatever you dump in there without having to think about what the videos are transcoded to. I put this in to see what the power consumption was like on the Raptor Lake processor that's inside this machine. You know, Raptor Lake famously hot, runs fast. The 11th gen was a real kind of sneaky low power performance mode, especially in the quad core that's in my B-Link. So when I plugged it in and set everything up, I set up a Linux Ubuntu server with Docker and Portainer, and then ran Plex in a Docker container. And I was really pleasantly surprised. It was running basically at idle about 1.5 watts or 2 watts higher, just regular current draw than the B-Link was. It was actually running a little bit lower under a heavy load. So when I had, like, my daughter was on her Minecraft server, when I was running Plex, stuff like that, this machine actually pulled a little bit less power than the B-Link. Now, it's a much more expensive machine, but it was also much more capable. I was able to do more video streams and stuff like that because the GPU and the QuickSync engine in here is able to do more simultaneous streams than the 11th gen. So that'll do it for us today. Thanks, Adam, for setting me up with this. Thanks, everybody, for watching the video. If you want to see more stuff about NUCs and other small form factor machines, please subscribe to the channel, because we will have more on PC World soon. Thanks for watching.